Hello everyone. So let us continue with the pharmacodynamics. In the earlier lectures we have seen the principles of drug actions, the targets, the various targets where exactly the drug can interact in the body. Then we have also covered the receptor theories and certain definitions pertaining to the drugs which are binding to the receptor, like say what is an agonist or antagonist, inverse agonist, partial agonist, and so on. So we have seen under the theories, there are two main theories which we have covered. The two-state model is the more acceptable one. So also we have seen that the receptors can be of different types. What is the nature of receptor? What are the different subtypes of a particular type of receptor is also we have seen. Then we have also covered the silent receptors, which are just acting as the acceptors of the drug. Also we have seen what is a drug action effect sequence. Okay, action effect sequence is what we have seen, and under that we have seen that a particular drug, it produces a drug action followed by which it will show the drug effect. Okay, so generally these two terms are used interchangeably. Okay, usually people get confused between these two terms, that is drug action and drug effect. Okay, usually they say that the drug shows the action, but usually the effects which you see, okay, like say for example decrease in the say blood glucose level by the insulin, okay, or say oral hypoglycemics, okay, so that is the effect. So action and effect, these are not the two same concepts. Okay, it is the drug action which is ultimately resulting in the drug effect. Exactly what effects it is going to produce, what changes it is going to show in the biological processes in the body, is what is known as the drug effect. So as we have seen in the earlier lecture, the drug action, it is the binding of the drug with the receptor. So it's the drug receptor interaction. Not only that, after this drug receptor interaction, what are the conformational changes which are being produced in that particular receptor. So this is included under the drug action. So binding and producing the conformation changes, that is known as the drug action. Whereas the drug effect is the ultimate changes in the biological functions which are brought about by some as a consequence of this drug action, by the help of certain transducer pathways. Okay, some intermediate steps may be involved. Okay, some signal which this drug is bringing, so that may be transduced into this effect, that is the ultimate change in the biological function which we can actually see, okay, or we can measure. Okay, so that is a drug effect, whereas the interaction of the drug and conformational changes is known as the drug action. So usually first the drug action is produced, and as a result of this drug action the drug effect will be produced. Okay, now in today's lecture we shall see what are those different transducer processes or transducer pathways by which this drug action is ultimately showing the drug effect. What are those intermediary steps which are actually responsible for transduction of the drug action into drug effects? Why do we see, or by what mechanism exactly we can see the drug effects? Okay, so coming to the transducer mechanisms. Okay, or over here we are also going to cover the different types of receptors. Generally most of the times in the examinations the types of receptors are asked. Okay, so this particular transducer mechanism, it is actually the classification of your receptors. The receptor, depending upon the different transducer mechanisms, by those signaling pathways, these are actually classified into 5 basic types. Okay, so depending upon the homology, maybe the structural homology or the signaling pathways, these are basically grouped into 5 major categories. Okay, so based on those multiple steps which may be involved, either multiple steps or maybe in a single step also, sometimes the signal may get transduced, that is, a drug action may be converted into a drug effect. Now let us see what are those 5 different categories into which you can divide your drug receptors based on these transducer mechanisms. Okay, now the first one is the G protein coupled receptor, or it is popularly known as GPCR. In the exams, the papers most of the time directly a note may be asked on the GPCR. Okay, so it's the first and the very important type of receptor, that is G protein coupled receptor. Again, there are 3 types of pathway within this GPCR also. We will come to that when we consider this GPCR in detail. Then the second type of receptor is ion channel receptor. So as the name implies here, the ion channel, we have already seen earlier that an ion can cross a membrane with the help of some specialized channels which are formed from the proteins, membranal proteins. Okay, so interior to these proteins there is a aqueous pore which opens and then ions can flow through. So these ion channels can also act as a receptor. Okay, so your drug can directly bind to these ion channels and make the changes in the movement of the ions. So such type of receptors are known as ion channel receptors. Then the third type of receptor is transmembrane enzyme linked receptor. Okay, so as the name implies, this is associated again with the membrane, transmembrane, meaning it is totally traversing your entire, the length of your thickness of your membrane, biological membrane. We have already covered the structure of the biological membrane, bilayered. Okay, phospholipid bilayers are present and there are integral proteins, so they act as enzymes. Okay, so your receptor itself is having the enzymatic property. Okay, so it can catalyze certain reaction. So some activation may take place with the help of that receptor, and it has intrinsic enzymatic property. So it is known as transmembrane enzyme linked receptor. Then the next type of receptor is transmembrane JAK-STAT binding receptors. Again, this also has some enzymatic activity, but in this, the difference in between the two is that here the receptor itself does not have the enzymatic property, but it gets bound to certain enzymes which further helps in transduction of the signals. Okay, then the next type of receptor is the receptors regulating gene expression, or these are also known as transcription factors or nuclear receptors. Okay, so here as the name implies, gene expression, meaning here protein synthesis will take place. So these receptors, when activated, ultimately they will result in some kind of protein synthesis which will then alter the functions or the biological function. Okay, so these are the 5 major classes into which the receptors can be divided into. Okay, so we shall consider all of these one by one in detail. We shall see how exactly, after binding a drug to these type of receptor, how exactly the signal is being transduced and how it is getting converted into a drug effect. Okay. Now, to start with the first type, that is the G protein coupled receptor or GPCR. This is a very important class of drug which is a it's a largest family of the receptor actually, and this receptor are mainly associated with the cell membrane. These are cell membrane receptors. These receptors are located in your cell membrane, As you can see, this particular portion, it is a part of a cell membrane, right? You can see here lipoidal bilayer and interspersed within intrinsic proteins and the extrinsic proteins. So these integral proteins which can traverse across the membrane, they actually form these G protein coupled receptor. Okay, now these receptors GPCR mainly function through, or they are linked to one or the other effector. Now this effector may be either an enzyme or a channel or a carrier protein. So ultimately these effectors are getting altered. Now how the signal is carried through this or to this particular effector is through one or more GTP activated proteins. So these are known as G proteins. So these G proteins are actually responsible for the action. So when this receptor is stimulated after binding of your drug, that is your agonist, so some kind of G proteins will get bound to this particular receptor. It has a peculiar structural features, wherein there are 7 actually alpha helical membrane spanning sequences. It's a protein, right? So it will be made up of amino acids. Okay, so basically these amino acids are sequentially arranged in such a way that they form 7 membrane spanning helicals. You can see here over here, this is the first one, second one. Okay, so first one, then comes the second one, then the third one, then the fourth one, then the fifth one, then sixth one, and then the seventh one. Okay, so it's a continuous sequence of the amino acids, but these are placed in such a way that they form 7 alpha helical membrane spanning segments. 7 segments it is divided into. Okay, and in this particular structure, as the amino acid sequence it progresses, it forms 3 intracellular loops. You can see over here, this one, and this one. So there are 3 intracellular loops and there are 3 extracellular loops. These 3 loops are present on the extracellular surface. This is the intracellular surface, right? So 3 loops are located intracellularly and 3 loops are located extracellular, because it's a continuous sequence of amino acids. So they are arranged in such a way that 7 alpha helical structures are formed within the membrane, and there are 3 extracellular loops and there are 3 intracellular loops which are formed. Okay, now coming to the binding sites on this particular type of receptor. So usually all the G protein coupled receptor has this particular type of structure. 7 alpha helical membrane spanning segments of amino acids will be there and 6 loops will be there. Now within these helicals or the segments, somewhere on the extracellular surface there will be the agonist binding site. This one, agonist binding site. It will be located on the extracellular face of your receptor. Whereas there is one more site which is present towards the intracellular phase of the receptor. So that particular site is known as G protein binding site. Okay, so as we have seen over here in this type of receptors, these are cell membrane receptors because they are located in the cell membrane, and how they mediate their action towards the effector, they mediate through binding of one or more GTP activated protein, that is G proteins. Okay, so these G proteins can bind to this particular receptor from the intracellular side. Okay, and these on one of these loops, okay, they form actually the subunits alpha, beta and gamma. So on these, basically on the alpha subunit there is a G protein binding site. Now what are these G proteins? Obviously these are proteins in nature. So these are generally, G proteins are the proteins which are generally floating in these particular membranes. Okay, there are specific type of G proteins. We will come to what are the different types of G proteins. So specific type of G protein, when it gets activated by stimulation of the receptor, Okay, once the receptor is stimulated, some G protein, according to what signal this agonist is bringing, a specific type of G protein will come, which is floating in this membrane. So it will come and bind to these G protein binding site on the alpha subunit, and further it will carry the signal. Okay, so let us see how exactly or what exactly is happening. So in the inactive state, when the receptor is not stimulated, usually GDP is bound over here, okay, to the alpha subunit. Now once the receptor is activated, okay, onto that G protein which binds to this G protein binding site, it has GDP. Now once the receptor is activated after the agonist binding onto its site, the receptor gets activated. So once it is activated, this GDP which is bound over here on the G protein, this GDP is replaced by GTP. So the GTP will come and bind over there. Okay, so now this active alpha subunit which is carrying this GTP, okay, once it is activated, GTP will get bound to that particular alpha subunit. So once it gets activated, what happens is this alpha subunit, this gets dissociates from the other two subunits. It has three subunits, right? Alpha, beta and gamma. So once this alpha subunit, it gets bind to the G protein, once it is activated, the GDP will get replaced with the GTP, and once it is activated, the alpha subunit along with that GTP, it will detach from this receptor. From the other two subunits, it will detach and move away, and further according to what G protein has come and bound, what agonist has bound and what signal it is bringing, according to that it will produce some effector pathway. Okay, so it will make certain changes which will depending upon what type of signal is being brought by your drug. Okay, or what type of G protein is binding to your receptor. Okay, so it's the alpha subunit which is more important over here, where exactly the G proteins are getting bound to. Of course, apart from that, even beta and gamma dimer, that also can produce certain effector pathways. It can also activate certain receptor operated potassium channels, or certain calcium channels may be inhibited. Okay, so some effects are shown by the other two subunits also. It's not that only always the alpha subunit will be responsible for the action. Now coming to the different types of G proteins, as we have seen over here, merely your drug binding to the receptor is not sufficient. Now depending upon what drug is binding to that receptor or what signal it is bringing, a particular type of G protein will come and bind to the G protein binding site, right? So now let us see what are those different G proteins and what exactly they are doing. Okay, so depending upon the type of G protein, the type of further signaling pathways will depend on. Okay, so some of the most important examples of the G proteins are listed over here along with their functions. Okay, along with how exactly they will transduce their signal. So when the GS type of G protein binds to your receptor, it may result in adenylyl cyclase activation. It will activate this enzyme adenylyl cyclase, or calcium channel opening might take place. Then the next type of G protein is GI. So GI can inhibit this enzyme adenylyl cyclase, or it may open potassium channels. The next type of G protein is GO, which may inhibit the calcium channels, or GQ, which may activate the phospholipase C, which is another enzyme. Okay, so it may be activated by GQ when GQ binds to the receptor. Okay, now there are very few of these G proteins which may carry the signals in a number of types of receptors. Okay, it's not that every type of receptor will have its own G protein. Okay, so same G protein may be utilized by a number of receptors. As you can see over here, muscarinic receptor, that is a type of cholinergic receptor. So which type of G proteins it is utilizing? GI. or GO or GQ. So depending upon which type of signal is being brought, accordingly the type of G protein will come and bind, and further signaling will depend upon it. Then dopamine receptor, there are again subtypes over here. So D2 receptor, D2 subtype of dopamine receptor utilizes GI or GO G proteins, or alpha 1 adrenergic receptor, it utilizes GQ. So again GQ is utilized by more than one type of receptor. Even GABA B, here GI or GO type of G proteins may be involved in carrying the signal. Okay, so it's not that G protein is producing one-to-one action. Depending upon the type of drug, type of the signal it is being brought, so that type of G protein will come and bind to the alpha subunit of your G protein coupled receptor, and depending upon which G protein has bound, the ultimate effectors will be either induced or it will be inhibited. So ultimately it will be converted into some type of effects. Okay, now so far we have seen that the receptor, when it is getting stimulated, the G protein will come and bind to the alpha subunit, right? So alpha subunit, once it gets activated, the GDP is replaced by the GTP. So GTP will come and get bound over there. Now this dissociated alpha subunit which is activated, which will further act on some effector, right? Now this alpha subunit, it has a GTPase activity. That is, alpha subunit, it can hydrolyze this GTP slowly to get converted into the GDP. Okay, so once it binds to your effector, maybe it is a transporter or maybe it is some enzyme or ion channel or whatever it is, where it goes and binds. So it will either activate or suppress it depending upon the type of action which is being shown. So slowly over there, what will happen, as it is either producing some action on that effector, what it will do, that alpha subunit, it has GTPase activity. So it will start hydrolyzing the GTP to GDP, and slowly it will get dissociated from that effector. But when it will get dissociated, only once that effector is either activated or inhibited. So unless and until it has induced some changes in that effector, it will not leave that particular effector on which it is acting. Okay, so once it is dissociated, once it has produced or imparted some change in that particular effector, it will dissociate from that and it will again rejoin to this other subunit, that is beta and gamma. So alpha subunit will go and again bind onto the receptor over here. On the alpha subunit will come back over here along with the beta and the gamma subunit. Okay, now this rate of hydrolysis of this GTP by the alpha subunit, okay, and exactly the period for which it remains activated, this is generally regulated by some another protein known as regulator of G protein signaling, which is known as RGS. Okay, now this onset of the response through this GPCR, actually it occurs in a very few seconds. Okay, so once this receptor is stimulated, for it to show the effect, okay, in that action effect sequence, so that action to get converted into the effect, it will take only a few minutes. Okay, so this receptor activation is, or its signal transduction is very fast, that is within a few minutes it will start showing its effects. Okay, now coming to the different pathways by which exactly these G proteins are transducing their signals. So there are three major effector pathways through which this GPCR can function. So these are as follows: adenylyl cyclase CAMP pathway. The second one is the phospholipase C IP3DAG pathway, and the third one is the channel regulation. Okay, so there are three different pathways by which exactly these G proteins can produce their effects. Okay, so 3 pathways are involved. Now coming to these individual pathways, now let us consider the first one, that is adenylyl cyclase CAMP pathway. So the basic process remains the same. Okay, so what is the first step? The agonist binding to your receptor. This is your G protein coupled receptor, right? So there are 7 alpha helical structures, right, which are traversing your membrane, right, and there are 3 extracellular loops and 3 intracellular loops, right. Then there are 3 subunits, right, alpha, beta and gamma. Okay, so what we have seen is mainly the alpha subunit, it carries the G protein binding site, and agonist binding site, and this will be towards the intracellular side, and the agonist binding site, it will be somewhere within the helices and it will be on the extracellular side, right. So this is your cell, this is the intracellular side, this is the extracellular side. Okay, so this is actually an example of a beta receptor which is stimulated by adrenaline. So now here adrenaline is acting as the agonist. So once the adrenaline binds to the receptor will get activated. So conformational changes will take place over here in such a way that whatever signal this ADR is bringing, according to that a particular G protein will come and bind to the alpha subunit, is what we have seen, right. So here you can see over here GS has bound to your alpha subunit, right. Now next, what is the step? Once it is activated, what happens? You can see over here usually GDP is bound, right, to your alpha subunit. But now here what has happened? GDP is being removed and GTP. So here it is replaced. The GDP is replaced with the GTP. So now GTP will remain bound to your GS alpha complex. So your G protein is bound to your alpha subunit, and over here once upon the activation the GTP is getting bound over here, GDP is removed. Okay, so here this is your GS alpha complex along with your GTP. Now here GTP has bound to your alpha subunit. Now next, what is happening? Now further, once this alpha subunit is activated, once it is being bound with your GS protein and it is being activated by GTP, so further it will detach from your other 2 subunits, that is from your beta and gamma subunits. It will detach from here and it will go and activate the enzyme called as adenylyl cyclase. Okay, remember under the G proteins, the examples we had seen that GS, it produces activation of adenylyl cyclase, right. So this GS, it comes and activates the adenylyl cyclase. Okay, so it's an enzyme. Okay, so it converts ATP into cyclic AMP. So once this adenylyl cyclase is activated, it will result in accumulation of CAMP, intracellular accumulation of the second messenger. Now this CAMP is acting as the second messenger. Who is the first one? This one, your G protein, which actually brings in what exactly must happen next. Okay, so this is the second messenger which is getting generated over here through activation of the adenylyl cyclase. So there is increase in the CAMP concentration intracellularly. Now what the CAMP does further? CAMP will further activate a CAMP dependent protein kinase. So this enzyme, once it is activated, it will start acting on the effectors. Okay, so it may phosphorylate or alter the functions of certain proteins intracellularly. Maybe it will act on some enzymes or ion channels or the transporters. Say it is acting on the ion channel also, right? Okay, or it may be acting on certain other functional proteins also. Okay, so by certain intracellular interactions, it is even mobilizing the calcium ions. So again troponin, it will act the calcium will interact with troponin. So there will be better excitation contraction coupling. So it can increase the cardiac contractility. or maybe over here in case of the smooth muscles, the smooth muscle relaxation may be produced, or say glycogenolysis may be produced, or lipolysis can be produced, or some secretion of the hormones or release of certain substances, or some transmission, okay, at the junction, some transmission of the hormones or maybe neurotransmitters may be seen, or hormone synthesis may be instituted. So any kind of effector may be affected in such a way that depending upon what signal this ADR is bringing over here, accordingly that particular effector will start showing the effects. Okay, so here what we have seen, this is the part of drug action. That is, your drug is coming, binding to your receptor, producing the conformational changes over here. So as a result of this, the effects will be seen. So these are the drug effects, right? Increase in the cardiac contractility, relaxation of the smooth muscles, glycogenolysis, release of some hormone, synthesis of some hormone. So these are the drug effects. So how this drug action is getting converted into drug effect? It's with the help of these transducer mechanisms. There are multiple steps involved over here which are actually converting your drug action into drug effect, right? So this is your first pathway, that is adenylyl cyclase CAMP pathway. So here adenylyl cyclase is the enzyme which is activated, CAMP is accumulated, in turn it will act on certain effectors. So we have, as we had discussed earlier, the CAMP may even directly act on certain calcium ion channels also in several organs like say heart, brain or kidney. Okay, so it will produce some or the other effect depending upon what signal this ADR is bringing over here. Okay, a number of multiple signals may be carried by this ADR, different in say different organs. Okay, now exactly opposite effects will be seen when GI gets bound to the receptor. Okay, now GI and GI, what we had seen, that it can inhibit this enzyme adenylyl cyclase, right? So exactly opposite effects are produced by the ACH. Okay, so ACH, it won't bind to this receptor. This receptor is a beta receptor, it is an adrenergic receptor. So ACH, it will get bound to the cholinergic receptor, it is acetylcholine, it can bind to the muscarinic type of cholinergic receptor. So as a result of this, what is happening, a G protein is coming and binding to the alpha subunit. Now here which type of G protein is getting bound? GI. Here GS was getting bound to your alpha subunit, but here what is happening, GI is getting bound to the alpha subunit. So as a result of this activation, what is happening, GDP is replaced with the GTP. Now this GTP bound GI alpha complex, it detaches from your receptor and it will go and inhibit. Here you can see there is a minus sign. So this complex is inhibiting the adenylyl cyclase. So what will happen, this conversion will be inhibited, right, ATP to CAMP. So CAMP accumulation intracellularly will not take place, as a result of which CAMP dependent protein kinase will not get activated. So further effects on the further effectors will not be shown. So all the effects will be reversed. Okay, so opposite actions may be produced when GI protein is getting bound to certain receptors. Now again, that will depend upon what type of drug is getting bound to which type of receptor. Okay, then coming to the second signaling pathway of GPCR, that is phospholipase C IP3DAG pathway. Okay, now over here again the initial steps remain the same. Okay, so first step will be your agonist binding to your receptor. Now here in this case, this GPCR is a histamine receptor. Okay, H1 receptor it is. So what will happen here, histamine can come and bind to the receptor, it will activate the receptor. So it will induce a conformational changes. So what can happen, depending upon what signal histamine is bringing, a particular type of G protein can come and bind to the G protein binding site on the GPCR. Okay, that is, now here you can see that GQ is getting bound. Can you recall the types of G proteins? We had seen that GQ can activate the phospholipase, right? Okay, so it can activate the enzyme phospholipase C. So here, once histamine binds to this receptor, it will induce the conformational changes. It will activate the receptor, as a result of which GQ will come and bind to the alpha subunit of the receptor. Again, GDP is replaced with the GTP. So this GTP bound GQ alpha complex, what it can do? It can activate the phospholipase C. So it will detach from your receptor, go to the phospholipase C, and it will activate that phospholipase C. Okay. Now this activation of phospholipase C, it in turn hydrolyzes the membrane phospholipid. Okay. So as we have seen that the biological membrane, it consists of several phospholipids, right? Okay. So this particular membrane phospholipid, that is phosphatidyl inositol 4,5 bisphosphate, that is PIP2 bisphosphate, 2 phosphates, right, at 4 and 5 position. So that's why it is known as PIP2. So this membrane phospholipid, it is hydrolyzed by phospholipase C to generate 2 second messengers over here. Okay, in case of earlier pathway, adenylyl cyclase CAMP pathway, we have seen that second messenger is CAMP, right, which is further carrying the signal. Okay, so in the same way over here, by activation of the phospholipase C, the membrane phospholipids, that is phosphatidyl inositol 4,5 bisphosphate, it is getting hydrolyzed to generate 2 second messengers, and these include IP3 and DAG. Okay, so 2 second messengers are generated, that is inositol 1,4,5 triphosphate, that is IP3, it is known as IP3, and the second one is the diacylglycerol, DAG is the accepted short form for that. Okay, so these are the 2 second messengers which are generated. Now these 2 second messengers will carry the signal in their own way. Now this IP3, it is actually a water soluble one. So what it will do, instead it will get it will start entering your cytosol. It will diffuse into the cytosol, and further what it can do, it can mobilize the intracellular calcium ions, the stored calcium ions from the endoplasmic reticulum. Generally endoplasmic reticulum stores the calcium, right? So what this IP3 will do, the second messenger, it will produce the release of the stored calcium ions. Okay. On the contrary, the DAG, the second messenger, another second messenger which is generated, that is diacylglycerol, it is actually lipid soluble in nature. So it remains in the membrane. Okay, and it activates the membrane bound protein kinase C. Okay, so this enzyme is activated. So since this enzyme is activated along with this calcium, okay, along with the mobilized calcium, this activated protein kinase C further will start phosphorylating certain proteins. Certain effectors will be phosphorylated, and ultimately the effectors may be altered and they will show certain changes in the biological effects. Okay, even the released calcium, that is the cytosolic calcium, the amount of calcium is increased, right? So this calcium again acts as the third messenger, right? The first messenger was a G protein. The second messengers which were generated over here are IP3 and DAG. Further, this calcium which is mobilized, that acts as a third messenger. Okay, so this calcium, it may modulate various biological functions through, say, calmodulin. These may interact with maybe MLCK. Okay, further contractions may be affected, or CCPK, or some other effectors may be altered by this calcium. So as a result of this, maybe it may alter the contractions, okay, or some release or secretions of certain maybe transmitters or hormones may take place, eicosanoid synthesis or neuronal excitability may be seen, or intracellular movement of certain substances, or certain membrane functions may be altered, or metabolism of the cell may be altered, or cellular proliferation may take place. So several effects may be generated by these particular third messenger. So it will carry further signals, okay, and accordingly it will start producing the effects, okay, as per the signal which is brought by the agonist. Okay, now just like in case of adenylyl cyclase, we have seen that GS can stimulate it or activate that adenylyl cyclase, and GI protein can inhibit adenylyl cyclase. In the same way, this phospholipase C, it can also be inhibited through GI proteins. So in a particular receptor, if it is activated and GI protein binds to it, it can inhibit this enzyme phospholipase C, and opposite effects may also be seen. Then the third type of signal pathway in case of GPCR, it is the channel regulation. Okay, so here the activated G proteins, these can open or close the ionic channels, which may be specifically meant for the movement of the ions like calcium or potassium or sodium. Okay. Now here directly the G proteins are causing the opening or closing of the channels. Here the release of some second messenger is not being done, just like what we have seen in the earlier two pathways. CAMP or IP3 or DAG is produced, and that will further act on the effectors. But in this case, channel regulation, it's directly the G proteins which are acting on these ion channels, either opening them or closing them. So as a result of which the movement of the ions across the membrane will be altered. So their distribution across the membrane will be altered. So there will be a change in potential. So hyperpolarization, depolarization, it may take place, or maybe the changes in the concentrations of the calcium ions intracellularly. These may be produced by the G proteins directly, as we can see over here. Okay, GS, it can activate or it can open the calcium ion channels, right? So it is directly, it is not releasing any kind of transmitter over here or the second messenger. So it itself can directly act on the ion channels, or it may act through the second messenger. But here in certain cases, in certain types of receptor, directly the G proteins can also open the or close the channel. Say for example GS, it can open the calcium ion channels in the myocardium, that is in the cardiac muscles or the skeletal muscles, whereas GI and GO, they can open the potassium channels in the heart and the smooth muscles. Also they can close the neuronal calcium channels in the nerves, okay, in the membrane of the neurons. The calcium ion channels can be closed. Okay, they will inhibit the calcium ion channels, opening of the calcium ion channels. So here directly the G proteins may also regulate the channels, either opening or closing of the channel. So as a result of which several biological effects like inotropy, that is the change in the force of contraction, chronotropy, that is a change in the heart rate or the transmitter release, neuronal activity, alteration in neuronal activity, or the smooth muscle relaxation may be seen. Okay, now this particular table, it shows the examples of several receptors, okay, which mediate the several pathways, which are mediated through the several pathways of the GPCR. Okay, that is the three which we have seen, that is adenylyl cyclase CAMP, phospholipase C IP3 DAG pathway, and channel regulation. Okay, so examples of this adenylyl cyclase CAMP mediated receptors when it is activated. Okay, so activation of adrenaline cyclase, it is utilized by beta receptors, that is adrenergic receptors, H2 histaminergic receptors, dopaminergic D1 receptors, several hormonal receptors. Okay, then prostaglandin receptors, prostacyclin receptors, and inhibition of this adrenaline cyclase, it is utilized by alpha 2 adrenergic receptor, muscarinic receptor, M2 type, D2 dopaminergic receptor, then the serotonergic, GABA, opioid receptor, angiotensin receptor. So these are some of the examples. Then in case of phospholipase C IP3-DAG pathway, this is utilized by alpha 1 receptor or H1, muscarinic M1, M3, 5-HT2 receptor. So here several subtypes of the receptor may utilize different types of pathways, right, is what we can conclude from this. Even channel regulation, depending upon what type of channel. Okay, calcium channel, it is opened by, in case of beta 1. Calcium ion movement is inhibited in case of D2 or GABA receptor or opioid receptor. Potassium channel opening in case of alpha 2, M2 or D2, 5-HT1A, GABA B receptor, opioid mu and delta receptor, and so on. So different types of receptor may involve different types of transducer mechanism. Okay, that is within GPCR again there are different pathways which can be followed by different subtypes of the receptor. Okay, now coming to the second type of receptor. So here we have finished the GPCR, the first type of the receptor, the very important type of receptor, that is G protein coupled receptor. Okay, the second type of receptor is ion channel receptor. Okay, now as the name implies, this is basically a ligand gated ion channel. Okay, so before this also in the GPCR also there was a channel regulation, right? So here ion channels were either opened or closed. But what was making that ion channel to open or close? It was a G protein, right? Either GS or GI. It was opening or closing that ion channel. But here, in this particular case, it is the ion channel itself which is acting as the receptor. So here G protein or any second messenger is not involved. Directly your drug will go and bind to this ion channel. Okay, so as a result of your agonist binding to this channel, it may result in opening of that ion channel, or it may prevent the opening of that ion channel. So as a result of that, again the movement of ions may get affected. So change in the ionic concentration across the membrane will take place. So change in the potential across the membrane will take place, as a result of which the depolarization, hyperpolarization may take place, or changes in the cytosolic ionic composition may take place as a result of movement or prevention of movement of the ions across the channel. Okay, if you consider the structure of that particular type of receptor, okay, that is the ligand gated ion channel, it's usually a pentameric protein. So it will involve 5 subunits. Okay, just like, can you imagine a flower with the 5 petals? When it is closed, when it is a bud, okay, all the petals are held together. But when the flower opens, all the petals move apart, right? So in the same way over here, this particular ion channel, it's a pentameric structure. It has 5 subunits usually. Okay, so here generally your ligand binding site will be there, agonist binding site will be there. Okay, so your agonist, it will bind to this subunits, any one of the subunits which carry the receptor, and as a result of this conformational changes will be introduced into it, and all these subunits will move up. Okay, so usually it consists of subunits. 5 subunits will be present. Okay, and this particular ion channel, it will be a transmembrane structure. Okay, so these are the 5 subunits. As you can see that this is your membrane, so it's an integral type of protein, right, and it is arranged in the form of 5 subunits, and usually one particular subunit will carry the receptor for binding of your agonist. As you can see over here, that this is your ligand binding domain. So your drug can bind over here, and on the alpha subunit generally the binding site is present for this particular case. Okay, so these 5 subunits, once the receptor binds to this, once the drug gets bound to this particular receptor, say you can see over here, agonist has bound to the alpha subunit. So what has happened? It has produced some conformational changes. So what has happened? All these subunits which were held together, now what has happened? After binding of the agonist, all the 5 subunits have moved apart. So as a result of which, what has happened? In the middle there is a aqueous pore through which all these ions can flow through, because ions cannot cross the membrane directly by diffusion because it has a charge, so it will get repelled. Okay, so it can flow through very easily with the help of these ion channels. So this particular type of receptor here, basically the ion channel itself is acting as the receptor. Okay, and on this ion channel there will be one site onto which your drug can bind to. Okay, so now apart from this, there are even certain types of ion channels which have a secondary ligands. So they can also get bound to your receptor, and they can also modulate the opening of this particular channel. Say for example, the BZD receptor, it's actually a chloride channel. BZD binding site is there, and on that GABA binding site is also there. So actually the GABA, which is a transmitter, it also can modulate the opening of this particular channel. So it is a GABA gated chloride channel actually, but it has a BZD, it's a benzodiazepine receptor. It also acts as a benzodiazepine receptor. Okay, so here, as I've told you earlier, any kind of coupling of G protein or generation of the second messenger is not involved. Directly binding of your drug to your receptor will open the channel. Okay, now here the onset or the offset of the response of this particular type of receptor, it is the fastest. In case of GPCR, we have seen that few seconds are required, right? But here within few milliseconds the action will be produced. Examples of receptors include nicotinic cholinergic receptor, then GABA A receptor, glycine receptor, and 5-HT3 serotonergic receptor. These are the examples of the ion channel receptor. Then coming to the third type of receptor, that is transmembrane enzyme linked receptor. Okay, now as the name implies, this particular receptor, it is a transmembrane. It will traverse throughout your membrane, and it has enzymatic property. Okay, so this particular type of receptor on the extracellular surface, it has a ligand binding domain, this one where exactly your agonist or your drug can bind, and it has a single transmembrane helical peptide chain, a single chain. Previously, before this, we have seen in case of GPCR there are 7 alpha helical such segments, right? But in this case there is only one. And extracellularly there is a ligand binding domain, whereas intracellularly this particular segment, it has enzymatic property. This particular part of the receptor, it will have some enzymatic property, so that it will produce some kind of alteration, maybe phosphorylation. Okay, so basically this particular enzyme, it is a protein kinase in most of the cases. Sometimes it may be guanylyl cyclase also in very few cases. Okay, so usually this particular enzyme, the protein kinase which is present over here, it can phosphorylate a tyrosine residue, and it is known as the receptor tyrosine kinase. Okay, RTK is the name given to this particular segment of your receptor which has enzymatic property. What type of enzymatic property it has? It is a protein kinase actually, which can phosphorylate a tyrosine residue. That's why it is known as receptor tyrosine kinase, or simply RTKs. Okay, now let us see how exactly it carries the signal. Now, usually when there is no drug bound to this particular receptor, this protein kinase, it is inactive. Okay, so it does not show any enzymatic property. However, when some kind of hormone gets bound to your receptor, okay, when the hormone comes and bind to your receptor, the two molecules of your receptor will start to dimerize. Okay, they will get converted into dimer. Okay, so two molecules of your receptor will join together. They will be associated together to form a dimer. Okay, now as a result of this dimerization, there will be some conformational changes which will be brought about in this particular receptors. So as a result of this, the protein kinase enzyme, okay, it is actually inactive, right? But only when the drug binds to this receptor, dimerization will take place, as a result of which conformational changes will be produced over here, and this enzyme, it will get activated. The kinase which is there, protein kinase, it will get activated. So as a result of activation, this kinase, it will autophosphorylate the tyrosine residues. Can you see here, there are tyrosine residues? Okay, so this kinase enzyme over here on your receptor, they will phosphorylate the tyrosine. But what is said over here, they can phosphorylate, autophosphorylate the tyrosine residues on each other. That is, this enzyme will phosphorylate the tyrosine on the other receptor molecule, and this tyrosine kinase, it will phosphorylate this particular tyrosine residue. Okay, so what happens over here, after binding your drug, okay, or the hormone to your receptor, they will dimerize. As a result of this, conformational changes will take place and the kinase will get activated and it will phosphorylate the tyrosine residue on each other. So here you can see phosphate, so phosphorylation has taken place. So as a result of this phosphorylation, it increases the affinity for the binding of the substrate proteins to your receptor. Okay, so certain proteins which have this SH2 domain, it increases the affinity of binding to the SH2 containing proteins. So as a result of this binding, what will happen? It will in turn phosphorylate this protein which is attached to your receptor. Okay, so here you can see that it has got phosphorylated, and this phosphorylated protein, this in turn will carry the further signal. It will carry out the further responses according to what signal is being brought by your drug or by your. Now, a large number of intracellular signaling proteins, they have these SH2 domains, so they can bind to your receptor, they will get phosphorylated, and further the processes may be altered, say by controlling the phosphorylation of certain enzymes or ion channels or certain transporters. These RTKs, these are able to control several cellular functions. Maybe metabolic reactions may be altered, or cell growth or differentiation may be altered. Okay, so likewise the effects may be shown. The examples of such type of receptor include insulin or epidermal growth factor or the nerve growth factor and several other types of growth factor receptors. These are the type of transmembrane enzyme linked receptors. Okay, now the time taken to produce this actions which are mediated through this type of receptor, this takes a little bit longer time. Okay, say few minutes to few hours are required, okay, for them to generate their action, because the dimerization, enzyme activation, binding to the SH2 protein, further phosphorylation, it takes a little bit time. So usually the onset of action, it takes a little bit longer as compared to previous types of receptors. Now, as I've told earlier, in certain cases, instead of protein kinase, your receptor may also have guanylyl cyclase. Right? Say for example, atrial natriuretic peptide hormone, it has guanylyl cyclase activity. So CGMP will get generated over here, and further this CGMP. This will activate the CGMP dependent protein kinase, and this in turn, this enzyme in turn, activated enzyme in turn will modulate the cellular activity. But few of the receptors mediate by this particular pathway. Usually it is a protein kinase which is present in this type of receptor. Then coming to the next type of receptor, that is transmembrane JAK-STAT binding receptor. Okay. Now here RTKs are not involved, that is your receptor does not have any intrinsic catalytic domain. The receptor does not have any enzymatic property. Just like in the previous case we have seen that the receptor, the intracellular domain itself has the enzymatic property, right, which gets activated upon the binding of your agonist and dimerization. But that is not the case with this type of receptor. Now usually let us see what are the different steps which are involved in this type of receptor. Now usually when an agonist binds to this type of receptor, it will result in dimerization. Okay, again the same way, just like your previous type of receptor. Okay, transmembrane enzyme linked receptor. Over there also when hormone binds, dimerization takes place, right, and the enzymatic activity gets activated. Okay, but over here when agonist binds to your receptor, dimerization takes place. So as a result of this dimerization, there is intracellular changes in the conformation. You can see over here tyrosine, tyrosine is present, residue is present on this particular type of receptor also. But let us see what exactly is happening, how it is getting phosphorylated. Okay, so once dimerization takes place, two molecules will dimerize. Okay, so as a result of this dimerization, it will produce some conformational changes in such a way that it increases the affinity of this receptor for binding of one more structural protein, that is the cytosolic tyrosine protein kinase known as JAK, that is Janus kinase is the name of the enzyme. So it gets bound to your receptor intracellular. So this dimerization, binding of your drug or your endogenous substance, it dimerizes the receptor, two molecules will come together, it produces the conformational changes in such a way that a tyrosine kinase, which is not a part of your receptor, it will come and bind to this receptor, that is known as JAK, that is Janus kinase. Now upon getting bound, this Janus kinase, it gets activated once it gets bound to your receptor, and it will phosphorylate the tyrosine residue of the receptor. So this JAK will phosphorylate the tyrosine on this particular receptor, and this JAK will phosphorylate the tyrosine on this particular receptor. In the previous case what we have seen, that the tyrosine kinase, it phosphorylates the tyrosine on each others, right, each others, the two receptors. But here this JAK will phosphorylate its own tyrosine to which it is bound to, the receptor to which it is bound to. Okay, so now here phosphorylation of tyrosine residues of the receptor, it will activate the receptor in such a way that another freely moving protein STAT will come and bind to your receptor, two molecules of the STAT, that is signal transducer and activator of transcription. So these two molecules will come and bind to your receptor. So once it is bound, this JAK, which has a protein kinase activity, this will again phosphorylate the tyrosine which is present on the STAT. Okay, so this STAT again will get phosphorylated. Now this pair of phosphorylated STAT, okay, now this STAT again has got activated. So this STAT, activated STAT or phosphorylated STAT, again it will dimerize and it will get detached from this particular receptor. Here you can see both of them have dimerized, right, these two molecules of STAT which are phosphorylated. So this will detach from the receptor and it will be translocated to the nucleus to regulate some gene transcription. So as a result of which some biological response will be seen because of the transcription of the genes. So the examples of the receptor include the receptors for the cytokines or the growth hormone or the prolactin. Okay, so these are the examples. Then the last type of receptor is the receptor regulating gene expression or transcription factors or nuclear receptors. So as the name implies, here this type of receptor is expressing the genes, so some protein synthesis is taking place. It is also known as nuclear receptor because it's actually acting in the nucleus. Okay, that's why they are known as nuclear receptors. Okay, now all the 4 classes which we have seen so far, all of them were membrane associated receptors, right? All of them were present, embedded in the membrane. Membrane proteins were acting as a receptor. So in contrast to all of these 4 classes, this particular type of receptor, nuclear receptor, this is actually a intracellular soluble protein, okay, which is acting as a receptor. So either it will be cytoplasmic or it may be present in the nucleus itself. Okay, so this basically this type of receptor, it can be activated by a lipid soluble substances which can penetrate the cell, which can enter the cell. Usually so far we have seen that the agonist binding site is located extracellularly, right? So your drug or your agonist will bind to your receptor extracellularly, and then that signal will be carried intracellular. Some intracellular conformational changes will take place, some signaling will be carried further internally. But this particular 5th type of receptor, it is quite different from all the other types. In that your drug has to cross the membrane and it has to reach the cytoplasm for it to gain access to its receptor. That's the difference over here. Okay, so now this particular receptor, now let us see how exactly this particular receptor is activated and how it carries the signal. So this particular receptor, it is inherently capable of binding to specific genes. Okay, so that's how the gene transcription can be instituted. Okay, so basically if you can see the structure, actually the example shown over here, this is a glucocorticoid receptor. Okay, it is also a nuclear receptor. Now if you can see the structure of this particular type of receptor, it has 2 domains. Your ligand binding domain or your steroid binding domain, because usually steroid type of drugs act by this mechanism. Okay, so steroid binding domain it has on the carboxy terminal, and a DNA binding domain is present, and both of these are joined together with a hinge region. Okay, so this particular type of receptor, it is actually able to bind to the genes, but it is kept inhibited by one more protein which is attached to this receptor. Can you see over here small structure, blue color? So another protein, maybe it may be HSP 1990 or some other protein which may be bound to your receptor, and it will keep your receptor inhibited till some substance or some hormone will come and bind to your receptor. Till then the receptor will not be able to bind to the gene for the transcription. Now once this hormone or a steroid enters the cell, it encounters the receptor, it gets bound to your receptor, which may be, in this case it is located on the carboxy terminal. So once it is getting bound to the receptor, this restricting protein, maybe HSP 90 or maybe some other protein which is kept inhibited, this DNA binding domain, it is kept inhibited because of this structure. So once your drug comes and bind to this receptor, this restriction protein is removed from your receptor, it is released. Okay, so once it is released, your receptor will get dimerized. Again here dimerization is there. Okay, so as a result of this dimerization, there are some conformational changes which are produced in this DNA binding domain. So this conformational changes will be instituted in such a way that they are required for them to appropriately convert the signal. okay, in the form of transcription. So they will get oriented in such a way. Okay, so this ligand bound dimer of your receptor, it will move towards your nucleus, it will enter the nucleus, and it will bind to one more structure known as either coactivators or co-repressors. Okay. Now what are these coactivators or co-repressors? Now when a coactivator will get bound to your dimer of your activated receptor, it will result in transcription. That is, some kind of mRNA will be generated, which will signal the synthesis of some kind of protein. Or when it binds to co-repressor, repression will take place, means the protein synthesis will not take place. It will inhibit the protein synthesis. Okay, so depending upon what signal is being brought by your drug, either coactivator will get bound if protein synthesis is supposed to take place, or if it has to suppress the protein synthesis, co-repressors will get bound to your receptor. So again here, now this dimer, this whole complex, it will attach itself to a specific DNA sequence depending upon what the signal is being brought by your drug. So it will get bound to the target genes, and either it will facilitate or repress depending upon whether coactivators have been bound or whether co-repressors have been bound. So accordingly it will either facilitate the generation of the specific type of mRNA, that is transcription will take place, or it will inhibit the transcription. Okay. Now this mRNA, if at all it is formed, so this mRNA, it will carry the signal for protein synthesis. It will move towards the ribosome for the protein synthesis. And depending upon the type of proteins, depending upon the signal which is being brought, the type of proteins will be produced, and there can be modification of the cellular functions which may take place. Now, examples of the receptors which are mediated through this nuclear receptor are steroidal hormones, receptors for the steroidal hormones, that is glucocorticoid receptor, mineralocorticoid receptor, androgens, estrogen, progesterone receptor, or thyroxine receptor, or vitamin D, vitamin A receptors. Okay, so now different type of steroidal hormones, they may affect the different targets. So different types of effects may be produced depending upon which type of receptor is getting stimulated. Either synthesis of some protein will take place, or inhibition of synthesis of certain proteins may take place, and accordingly the drug effects may be produced. Okay, there is even the specificity as to which hormone will bind, that is provided by the hormone binding domain. Okay. Whereas which gene will be activated or repressed, that will dependent upon the DNA binding domain. Okay. Even there are chimeric receptors, that is one particular hormone, it may produce the effect of some other hormones also, it may happen, okay, because of the presence of chimeric type of receptors. Okay, now out of all the transducer mechanisms which we have seen, this one is the slowest to produce the action. It will take a few hours for it to show its effects. Okay, because here as we have seen, it's a long process, right? It has to induce or inhibit the protein synthesis, right? So as a result of which, only when those proteins are synthesized in the sufficient amount, or only when the protein synthesis is inhibited in the sufficient amount, is the appropriate effects will be seen. So it will take a lot of time for it to show its action. So it takes longest out of all the 5 to show its effect. This finishes the transducer mechanisms. This is a reference. Thank you.